Hey guys, tonight we slip behind the curtain of reality and tiptoe into the dark. Not just nightfall, but night, with a capital N Nyx. The kind of night that swallows sound, blurs boundaries, and makes the gods themselves hesitate. You're drifting in a world before time, no sun, no stars, no TikToks, just the deep, silent hum of chaos. Out of that yawning, velvet nothingness, something stirs. No sparks, no trumpets, just a presence, cool and quiet, older than memory. Nyx doesn't arrive. She is. And you probably won't survive this dot, so before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and local time. I always love seeing who's tuning in from where. Now. Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You hover at the edge of everything, floating just above the vast chasm of non-being. And there, twining upward from chaos like inky mist, Nyx takes shape. She's not born in the human sense. There's no baby Nyx crawling around in a cosmic diaper. She simply emerges, already fully herself. Dark as obsidian and older than time. If you're imagining a goth goddess in flowing black robes, you're not far off, except this one can make Zeus turn pale. According to Hesiod's Theogony, she's one of the very first primordials, older even than Gaia, Earth herself. Chaos births her along with Erebus darkness incarnate, and together the two become parents of shadows and silence. But Nyx doesn't need a partner to become terrifying. She creates alone. A single breath from her mouth births Moros, doom, hypnos, sleep, thanatos, and nemesis, vengeance, among others. Honestly, it's like her idea of a family game night involves existential dread and soul-crushing consequences. Historians still argue whether Nyx was always considered this powerful, or if later poets and cults elevated her mythos to unsettling new heights. What's clear, though, is that from the beginning, she operates outside the usual divine pecking order. While other gods boast about thunderbolts, war, or beauty, Nyx doesn't bother. She doesn't need to yell. She's the quiet in your bones after a nightmare. She's the stillness when your flashlight dies in the woods. And unlike most Greek deities, she isn't tied to temples, offerings, or little marble statues you can politely ignore at the museum. She's in the corners of the world, folded into every dusk. You float past her now, through an atmosphere thicker than oil. No light pierces this place. It's not just the absence of brightness, it's a presence, a conscious pressing dark. You reach out your hand, and it vanishes before your eyes. You don't even know if you're falling or flying anymore. Gravity here feels optional. Time doesn't kick. It pulses like a heartbeat. The weirdest part? You feel oddly comforted, like curling under a heavy blanket. After a long day, if that blanket were woven from ancient cosmic silk and wrapped around your soul. One fringe theory from comparative mythologists claims Nyx might be the Greek echo of older Near Eastern goddesses of night and fate figures like Ereshkigal or Namu, whose presence was similarly more cosmic than personal. They weren't here to meddle in mortals' love lives or hand out golden apples. They were the framework, the primal settings, the unchangeable laws that even newer gods had to work within. Makes you wonder if the Greeks merely renamed something far older, folding it into their own version of the cosmostat, and that's what makes Nyx so terrifying. She doesn't seek your fear, but you fear her anyway. She doesn't demand power, because she's already written into the bones of it. She doesn't change, because she precedes change. You pass through a membrane of nothingness, and suddenly feel something like a breeze or the idea of a breeze brush across your cheek. It's not cold. It's not warm. It's just ... there. Then you hear the faintest whisper. Not a voice, not words, just dot 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 memory. As though the night is reminding you of Vod, something you didn't know you forgot, and you realize this is the world Nyx shaped. She doesn't need to rule it. She simply is it. She doesn't flash or boast. She waits. Even the other primordial beings tend to feel more neutral. Gaia is motherly, generative. Uranus is aloof, a little emotionally unavailable maybe. But Nyx, she's utterly self-contained. You can't bribe her. You can't anger her. You can't even find her unless she lets you. Which might explain why Zeus, in all his lightning-slinging glory, once backed off from punishing Hypnos, her son, when he fled to her realm. The king of the gods stood at the edge of her domain, scowled into the dark, and then turned around. That's right. Mr. Thunderbolt himself decided, you know what? Never mind. We're good. And that wasn't even Nyx showing force. That was just her presence. It said that she was never worshipped in the traditional sense, because she didn't want to be. But she was acknowledged in hushed tones and shrouded hymns. No big altars, just murmured prayers before bed. A whispered request that your dreams be gentle, that the dark remain outside, that sleep not carry you too far. You float now at the edge of a cave that doesn't open, but absorbs. Something inside pulses like a distant drum. It isn't inviting you. It's simply there, and you get the creeping sense that all your moments past and future have already been watched by her. That when you close your eyes at night, she's not just nearby. She's within, and she's been waiting. You drift now through the deep, slow current of time, following Nyx not as a person, but as a presence. You pass her silently branching lineage children, not of blood and bone, but of concept. Not cuddly cherubs or giggling demigods, but pure abstractions, clothed in shadow, each more unsettling than the last. If Olympus is a palace of golden drama queens, Nyx's offspring live like quiet. Philosophers in a haunted library, except half of them would probably hex you for mispronouncing their names. You step through the threshold of her mind and into the nursery of nightmares. But here, instead of mobiles and lullabies, you find doom, literally. Moros, the embodiment of impending fate, drifts past you like a gray mist. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. You just know things are going to go wrong. Eventually, you can feel it in your teeth. He's not here to be evil. He just is. Like deadlines or the laws of thermodynamics. Then there's Hypnos, the god of sleep, always swaying gently, eyelids half lowered, looking like he's halfway into a dream journal entry. He's the most peaceful of Nyx's children, and honestly, the one you'd want at a sleepover. But don't be fooled. Hypnos can take down gods, literally. Once, he lulled Zeus himself into a deep snooze, which, spoiler alert, did not go over well the next morning. We'll circle back to that particular drama later. Thanatos is nearby too, leaning against a shadow that's darker than the dark around it. Thanatos isn't scary like horror movies. He's scary like inevitability. Gentle but permanent. A firm handshake that never lets go. The Greeks didn't fear him the same way they feared other death gods. He was more of a grim coworker than a villain. Historians still argue whether Nyx's children were truly seen as individual deities, or more as metaphorical extensions of her essence. Either way, they weren't confined to bedtime stories. They appeared in literature, rituals, and that eerie feeling you get when you're alone with your thoughts for too long. But we're not done yet. You pass by Momus, goddess of satire and blame, who probably would have had a lot to say about your last 3 texts. There's Geras, the personification of old age, who glares at your skincare routine and scoffs. There's Eris, Strife herself, who you might recognize as the chaos-loving drama queen behind the Trojan War. And of course, Nemesis Vengeance served cold, and with a perfectly arched eyebrow. Each of them is a fragment of human experience, drawn out of Nyx like smoke from a flame. None of them are born out of love or light. They're born because existence needs them. Like it or not, you try to imagine what it would be like to parent an entire cast of cosmic anxieties. Nyx didn't just bring these concepts into being, she wove them into the very machinery of fate. 1. Fringe academic once wrote that Nyx's children are a kind of dark mirror to the Olympian order and invisible balance that keeps all the shiny, high-drama gods from collapsing into pure chaos. After all, what's Zeus without Nemesis? What's Aphrodite without Eris? What's Poseidon without Hypnos when the seas sleep still? You wander further and realize her children rarely boast temples or grand statues. Yet they live longer than any hero or king. Mortals feared them, but more than that, they understood them. They recognized themselves in them, because what's more relatable than sleep, doom, and the urge to blame someone else? A few candlelit cults from the Greek periphery places like Thessaly or Euboea may have whispered prayers directly to some of Nyx's children, especially Hypnos and Thanatos. But no parades, no city-sponsored festivals. It's like acknowledging termites. You know they're there, and they probably have power. But you're not building a shrine to them. You pause in your wandering and glance over your shoulder, only to find that Hypnos is somehow behind you now. Was he always there? Are you asleep, or dreaming that you're awake? The lines blur around her children. They don't obey linear logic. In Nyx's world, time folds like soft cloth. Some ancient myths suggest her children dwell with her in a palace within Tartarus, the deepest part of the underworld. Not in torment, but in sanctuary. A realm of shadow where nothing moves fast and no pain ever really arrives. You float toward it now, watching the edges curl with obsidian mist. It's unsettling. And weirdly cozy. You spot a doorway, a soft, irregular arch of darkness, shifting like ink in water. On the other side, silence. You step through, and the air thickens with a scent you can't place. Not flowers, not rot. Something like sleep itself. And for a flicker of a second, you understand it all. The role each of these beings plays in the cosmic play. How humans, in their little mortal flurries of chaos, have always needed what Nyx gave them: limits, endings, reflection, and sleep. Then it's gone. You're left with a lingering sense of something greater just outside your reach. Like when you wake from a dream and try to explain it, only to realize the words don't exist. In some ways, Nyx's children are more present in your daily life than most of the Olympians. You don't always think of Athena or Dionysus, but you've met Nemesis, haven't you? When karma swung back around with glittery vengeance. You've met Eris, too, when your group chat imploded. And Hypnos? Oh, he shows up nightly, right on cue unless Moros gets to you first. And you get it now. Nyx wasn't feared because she screamed. She was feared because she whispered, and the world still trembled. You descend now, ever so slowly, into a place not quite on any map. Deeper than Hades, older than Gaia's green fields, and colder than any mountain peak even Olympus at its frostest can't quite compare. This is the domain of Erebus, Nyx's shadowy counterpart, and, depending on the mood of the myth, either her brother, consort, or just that mysterious neighbor no one dares question. But here, in the thick velvet of what can only be called primeval night, Nyx reigns alone. You don't walk here. You glide. The air is syrupy, but lightless, humming with the weight of stories too old to be told aloud. The walls aren't made of stone or flame, but of something darker, pure unbeing. You move through this realm like breath across a mirror, leaving no trace. This is Nyx's palace, if it can even be called that. No columns, no gold, no throne made of skulls or cliches. Just darkness that listens. In fact, scholars still argue whether this palace was meant to be a physical location in the Greek underworld or more of a poetic symbol, some kind of inner sanctum of the cosmos, known only through dreams. Either way, you're in it now. So, congratulations. No torches line these walls. Why would they? Nyx doesn't need light to see. You pass by a corridor of shifting silence where the very idea of sound dissolves. Each step is absorbed before it's heard. Each breath you take is somehow quieter than the last. There's no echo here because there's nothing for the sound to bounce off of. The place itself refuses to be witnessed. And yet, you feel it watching. You pass through a hall of smoke that doesn't rise. It coils and lingers like lazy ghosts, each one cradling a dream fragment, some tender, some terrifying. You see one shimmer briefly, a long-lost lullaby hummed by a mother to a child who would grow up to forget her voice. Another drifts by, a nightmare of drowning in an ocean made of stars. They flicker out as you approach, as though embarrassed by your attention. It said that within her palace, Nyx stores all dreams, all death's whispers, all twilight confessions never spoken aloud. Even gods might stumble here, unsure whether they were remembering or imagining. And you wonder, does she want guests? Spoiler, probably not. The only god who's ever dared approach this place with intention was Hypnos himself, retreating here after let's call it a minor thunderbolt incident with Zeus. You can imagine Hypnos, sheepish and sleep-deprived, slipping past the shadows to hide beneath his mother's cloak. And when Zeus came looking, sparks flying and eyes blazing, he found himself the Zeus stopped cold at the threshold. Even his ego couldn't muscle past the front porch. He hesitated. Then he turned. Not because Nyx threatened him. She didn't have to. She simply stood. And Zeus, god of the sky, lord of lightning, king of Mount Olympus, said, "You know what? Never mind. Now let's pause for a second to appreciate how rare that is." Zeus doesn't back down. From Titans? No problem. From fate? He'll yell at it. But from Nyx? Absolute nope. And here's the twist. She wasn't angry. She was present. You arrive now at a space that looks almost like a courtyard, if courtyards were built inside the dreams of black holes. The ground here is made of shimmering onyx mist, rippling with your every movement. From its center rises a pillar of what appears to be memory liquid, slow-turning, full of voices you can't quite recognize. This is the heart of her realm, where time loops back on itself like a lazy river filled with forgotten names. Fringe mythographers have speculated that this was where Nyx kept her most dangerous child, a pate deceit. Imagine giving birth to lies as a concept. Not fibs or little white stretches, but deception itself. And raising that child in a realm where nothing is quite real and everything changes shape. Classic Nyx move. Parenting goals, honestly. You reach out toward the pillar, and just for a moment, you see yourself only older. Or younger. Or maybe someone else entirely. Then the image is gone, swallowed back into the current. The shadows around you thicken, not threateningly, but with weight. A comfort blanket made of centuries. This realm, you realize, isn't evil. It's essential. It's the stillness that follows every ending. The place where dreams rest before being born. The hallway before life enters the stage. You feel, distantly, that the rest of the gods don't like to admit this place exists. It messes with their hierarchies, their sense of order. The Olympians love clear roles, sun, sea, war, wine. But Nyx's domain doesn't play by those rules. She's the asterisk beside every divine claim to power. The footnote reminding them, before there was order, there was darkness. And it wasn't empty. It watched, From somewhere, you hear the soft sound of wings. Not flapping, gliding. Something passes above you, maybe a raven, maybe something older. It circles once and fades, and with it, a scent, like rain on dry earth, like forgotten ink. You don't follow it. You just know. That was Nyx, checking in, and maybe, just maybe, letting you look a little closer than most. You start to drift again, rising from the depths of her palace, even though you're not sure you ever moved. The space around you seems to sigh, gently releasing you. Not out of impatience, but with the calm understanding that all things return here eventually. Light, or what passes for it, seeps in around the edges now. Not from a sun. There is no sun here, but from memory. From the edges of dreams fading into waking. But you're not awake yet. You've still got miles of myth to go. You emerge gently from the folds of Nyx's shadow realm. But even out here in the half-light, her presence clings to your thoughts like velvet smoke. There's no escaping the ripples she leaves in divine politics, especially when it comes to the king himself, Zeus, golden-throned, thunder-fisted Zeus. Normally, if a god crosses him, it's lightning first, questions never. But when it came to Nyx, Zeus backed off. Not once, not twice. Every single time. Let's rewind to the infamous Hypnos incident, which ancient sources describe with a kind of dramatic flair, usually reserved for soap operas or poorly hidden social media subtweets. Hypnos. Sweet dreamy Hypnos. It's roped into helping Hera, Zeus's long-suffering wife, distract her husband during the Trojan War. Hera wants to meddle again, and she needs Zeus asleep. Enter Hypnos, who obliges by lulling the king of the gods into a nap so deep you could have painted his nails and added glitter eyeliner without him noticing. But oh no. Zeus wakes up, and he's livid. He scans Olympus like a caffeine-deprived substitute teacher on the first day of class, demanding to know who knocked him out. Hypnos, wisely, sprints off. And where does he flee? Straight to Mom. Right into the cloak of Nyx. And when Zeus chases him there, he stops short. Doesn't curse. Doesn't threaten. Just stops. And turns around. That's it. That's the whole confrontation. Historians still debate whether this story was meant to highlight Nyx's literal power, or to serve as a metaphor for boundaries even the gods couldn't cross. Either way, it paints a pretty vivid picture. When Nyx draws a line, even Zeus doesn't just step over it, he redraws the battlefield and pretends he never saw it. You hover at the edge of that moment now, watching it play out like a slow-motion reenactment. Hypnos curling up in Nyx's folds, Zeus glowering at the shadows like a grounded teenager too embarrassed to admit he's afraid. And Nyx, she doesn't move, doesn't speak. She just is. And somehow, that's enough. There's something almost hilarious about it, in a terrifying way. Here's Zeus, all storm and swagger, reduced to a soggy puppy at the edge of an abyss. You imagine him pacing later, muttering, "I could have done something. If I wanted to," while Hera smirks behind a column. But the lesson here is deeper than divine embarrassment. Nyx's strength isn't in confrontation. It's in limit. She's not chaos, that's her sibling, technically. She's the boundary chaos presses against. She's the veil the gods won't peek behind. You can fight a monster. You can't punch the night. One fringe scholar once described her as the cosmic veto, a being who doesn't impose order, but rather draws the outer line of what can happen. And inside that line, the gods can squabble and scheme and seduce to their heart's content. But beyond it, that's Nyx's turf. You don't get to rewrite that script. And it's not just Zeus. Throughout the mythic canon, Nyx is name-dropped in the same breathless tone you'd reserve for a legend whose house you once passed on vacation. Hesiod's Theogony treats her with hushed reverence. Even Orpheus, who sweet-talked Hades himself, didn't try any charming tricks with her. He probably figured, if it ain't broke, and if it is Nyx, you don't fix it. You drift now across Olympus itself, listening for echoes of her name in the chatter of the gods. They don't talk about her often, but when they do, it's with that curious blend of fear and fascination. Like people talking about the deep ocean. They don't want to go there, but they can't stop imagining what might be waiting underneath. And here's the kicker. Nyx never goes out of her way to be feared. She doesn't send omens or monsters. She doesn't crash weddings or start wars. She doesn't need a PR team. Her power is passive, ambient. The way gravity doesn't ask your permission to pull you down. You pass Aphrodite now, in some golden dream of her own, lounging on rose petals and pretending she doesn't notice the occasional dark thought slipping in. Even the goddess of love can't escape the quiet tug of Nemesis. Born from Nyx, that cosmic balancing act is always nearby. Uncoiling like a measuring tape across divine egos, Eris too is having a moment. Hurling golden apples labeled for the fairest into immortal brunches. But you sense it's not her chaos that really unsettles the Olympians. It's the reminder that her mother is out there, unblinking, unbound, and profoundly unimpressed. There's a reason no temples are built in Nyx's name. Worship isn't the right word. You don't light incense for gravity. You don't offer fruit to entropy. You just live with it quietly, carefully, respectfully. That's what the ancients did with Nyx. A whisper before sleep. A hesitation before cursing the night. A glance at the stars and the question you don't want answered. You find yourself now in a quiet chamber carved into the side of myth itself. No furnishings. Just a single pool of shadowed water, reflecting not your face, but the concept of yourself. The idea you carry around. The you think you are. It ripples, then fades, and the only thing left staring back is the night. That's her power. Not destruction, not drama. Distillation.Nyx doesn't strip you down with fury. She simply removes everything that isn't truth. And that's what makes her the most feared primordial, not because she harms you, but because she reveals what you are beneath the noise. And for gods, just like for mortals, it can be a terrifying thing. You linger at the edge of that quiet pool for a moment longer, the echo of your almost face dissolving into ripples. Somewhere distant, laughter bubbles up, a sharp, dry laugh, like someone who knows too much and cares too little. You turn, and there she is. Hemera, Day, Nyx's daughter, or her opposite, or her rival, depending on who you ask and which moody vase painting you're interpreting. Hemera doesn't stride into view. She simply arrives, glowing softly like sunlight, filtered through gauze. She doesn't greet you. She doesn't need to. This is a reunion more than a meeting. And immediately, you feel the difference between them. Nyx is velvet. Hemera is linen. Nyx is the breath you hold. Hemera is the one you finally exhale. But here's the twist. The two never appear together. Not once. In all the tangled threads of Greek mythology, they always pass like ships in a cosmic shift change. When Nyx descends from the heavens, Hemera rises from the earth. When Hemera returns, Nyx ascends. No hellos, no hugs. Just a dance of non-overlap that's been going on since before linear time was even a twinkle in Chronos'. Historians still argue whether their avoidance of each other symbolizes pure opposition or harmonious balance. Are they rivals? Mirror images? Or is this the ultimate example of healthy boundaries? Honestly, it might just be history's longest-running shift rotation. You float now through this moment of transition, night melting into day, shadow folding gently into soft light. You expect it to be jarring, a cosmic clash of opposites. But no, it's seamless, graceful, like turning a page. And for a second, you wonder, is Hemera her daughter, or her continuation? In some accounts, Nyx gives birth to Hemera with Erebus, which makes a certain poetic sense, darkness and shadow producing day. But you can't help feeling it's less biology and more metaphor, like the idea that even night knows how to end. That sleep eventually becomes waking, that the scariest dreams fade when morning touches the pillow. Still, there's tension in this arrangement. You catch glimpses of it in the old myths, the way the ancients described the two as crossing each other at the threshold of Tartarus, never speaking. There's no battle, no drama, but the silence between them hums like a plucked string. You get the sense that Nyx doesn't dislike Hemera. She just exists apart from her. Maybe that's the rule. If one is here, the other is not. It's kind of like when two exes are both invited to the same wedding. They're civil, but they don't mingle. The old poets didn't waste much ink on their interactions, which only adds to the intrigue. Were they avoiding conflict, or avoiding revealing something deeper? Some scholars point to the ritual significance of dawn and dusk in ancient religious practices, noting how carefully they were marked. Maybe the Greeks sensed something holy in those in-between moments. Something powerful. Something Nyx-shaped. You glide now toward a mountain grove where night once touched the world, then lifted. The light is new, gentle, but it doesn't erase Nyx's presence. If anything, it illuminates it. The leaves still shimmer with dew, and in the shadows beneath the trees, you feel her retreating warmth. She's always leaving, just before you realize you need her. In Delphi, they whispered that the original oracle, the one before Apollo, before his lyres and laurels, was Nyx herself. That she spoke through darkness and smoke. That her truths came at night, not in the glittering light of day. Some fringe historians take that idea even further, suggesting that Hemera's rise marked not just a shift in sky, but a shift in dominance. The rise of the Olympians, the age of shining heroes and masculine thunder, and the quiet silencing of what came before. You walk now through a meadow where ancient women once gathered herbs by starlight, casting spells not in defiance of the gods, but in harmony with something deeper. A kind of whispered worship, not of Hemera, of Nyx, a kind of reverence that doesn't ask for miracles, just a good night's sleep and a dream that makes sense. A soft breeze brushes your face. It carries the scent of rosemary, damp stone, and old scrolls. You think of Nyx again, not as a threat, but as a rhythm. She is the silence and the heartbeat between things. And Hemera, she's what follows. Not better, just different. You return now to that mythic corridor between them, the moment of crossing. Picture it. Every single day, in a pattern older than civilization, they pass each other. One ascending, one descending. Never stopping. Never acknowledging. Just brushing the air. The other leaves behind. Is that rivalry? Or respect? Sibling dynamics among the primordial gods were never exactly healthy. Chaos wasn't much of a parent. Erebus kind of just vibed. And Nyx? She seemed to take the absentee route, letting her children grow into abstract horrors with minimal check-ins. But that doesn't mean she didn't influence them. Or her sibling daughter, whatever Hemera. You remember that sharp laugh from earlier? Yeah, that was probably Momus again, whispering about how humans project way too much onto their gods. Fair point. Still, you feel it. Nyx and Hemera are connected, not by blood or personality, but by purpose. They are the transition, the inevitability. Day must follow night. But night always returns. And so you float on, through fading stars and the first golden hints of morning, thinking about the way things begin and end. About how Nyx doesn't fight the dawn. She just lets go, because that's real power. Not resisting change, but owning your place in the cycle. The sun is fully up now, or at least it would be, if you were anywhere but here. But you're still gliding in that liminal space between waking and sleep, where the walls of Nyx's dominion are thin but unbroken. Just ahead, there's another hallway not carved, not constructed, but formed from soft folds in the fabric of reality itself. And inside, her quietest children, the ones you already know better than you think. You take your first step inside and immediately feel the shift. The air here is dense, muffled, like walking through wool soaked in dreams. A hush that doesn't merely request silence, it imposes it. You're entering the domains of Hypnos, Thanatos, and Oneiroi, the dream-slick triad that greets every living being, whether they believe in gods or not. Let's start with Hypnos again. Because of the three, he's the one you've met most often. He doesn't stride like Ares or twirl like Hermes. He drifts. He's already near your head before you even notice the weight behind your eyes. He doesn't knock. He just arrives. And when he does, you don't fight. You sink in the ancient world. Hypnos was often imagined as a beautiful youth, wings fluttering from his temples or shoulders, carrying a poppy stem in one hand. Yes, poppies, the flower of sleep, dreams, and later, opioids. A detail that feels less poetic and more concerning. Hypnos didn't have a temple cult, but he had something better: inevitability. While the Olympians wrestled for shrines and loyalty, Hypnos had your pillow every single night. People prayed to him not for fortune or fame, but for mercy, for rest, for sleep without fear. But sleeping near Nyx never came without risk, because Hypnos wasn't an only child. You glance to your left, and there's Thanatos Sleep's twin, dressed in the same shadows, but without the softness. Thanatos doesn't bring the temporary escape. He brings the final one, the god of death, but not war or plague, not violent death. That's someone else's department. Thanatos is the quiet end, the peaceful hush, the stillness after the last heartbeat. And again, no temples, no sacrifices, just a presence. The Greeks feared him less than you'd think. Hades ruled the underworld, but Thanatos was the one who came for you gently, like a kind nurse who just asks, "Are you ready?" and takes your hand without pressure. You see them now, side by side brothers, born of Nyx, yet so different in pace. One bringing dreams, one ending them, and in between them, rising like mist from the scenes of your thoughts. The Oneiroi, these are her dream children, winged spirits of sleep's stories, each one a flicker of memory, a shadow of a what if. The most famous of them, Morpheus, is often confused with Hypnos himself, but no, Morpheus shapes the dreams. He brings form to the formless. He is the architect of your midnight visions, the one who lets you fly, or forget, or walk into your old classroom in nothing but socks and confusion. Historians still argue whether the Oneiroi were ever viewed as independent deities, or just poetic shorthand for what happens when you're unconscious. But the Greeks definitely believed in dreams as more than biological leftovers. Dreams were messages, doors, warnings, sometimes sent by gods, sometimes intercepted by tricksters, sometimes just noise. You pass one now, a dream, not a god. It floats in the air like a soap bubble, shimmering with colors you can't name. Inside, an image of you as a child, chasing something through a field of fog. You can't quite remember what. It feels important. It always does. There were ancient rituals around dreams, you know. People would sleep in temples, hoping to receive a message, a sign. This practice, called incubation, was most famously done at the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing, but Nyx's children were always lurking nearby. Because healing dreams are still dreams. And the ones that came uninvited? Those were often hers. One fragmentary inscription from a long-forgotten cave shrine in Thessaly mentioned offerings left at night, not to Apollo, not to Artemis, but to those who glide between breath and stone. Most scholars assume this meant the Onoroi. A few suggest it was code for Nyx herself. You can almost hear her laughing at the ambiguity. You're floating deeper now, passing dream after dream. Some are tender. A reunion with a lost pet. A kiss you didn't get to say goodbye with. Others are nonsense spaghetti that screams, elevators that collapse sideways. A dentist who turns into your mother halfway through a lecture on taxes. And then there are the others, the ones you don't want to remember. These are Nyx's other sons, sometimes unnamed, sometimes just listed as those who walk in sleep's shadow, the ones who bring the nightmares, not to hurt but to reveal, to dig, to unearth. Because here's the uncomfortable truth: Nyx doesn't play favorites. She doesn't just give you rest. She gives you truth. And truth doesn't always tuck you in. You arrive now in a chamber of sleep where everything is soft and slow. The floor breathes. The ceiling weeps gently, not tears, but silence. You lie down without meaning to. And immediately you feel it. That pull, that slip, Hypnos at your brow, Thanatos at your feet, Morpheus in your chest, stirring stories you don't yet know. They don't speak. They don't need to. You are not in danger here. You are known. And in the corner still, and yet unmistakable, you see her. Nyx. Watching, not smiling, but not cold. Just there. She doesn't give you peace. She gives you permission. To rest, to end, to see, to understand. And you do. You close your eyes not from fear, not from command, but because it's the only thing left to do. You awaken not because you meant to, but because the dream let go. Not abruptly, not cruelly, like a hand unclasping from yours. A whisper saying, "That's enough for now," but even awake. You're not far from Nyx. You find yourself walking along an ancient path, cobbled with moonlight and worn flat by footsteps you can't see. This isn't Olympus. No marble pillars, no wine-soaked laughter echoing from across divine courtyards. Here the ground hums with old sacred silence. You've wandered into the realm of ritual, of belief, of candlelit prayers carried on wind, drifting toward the one goddess who doesn't need praise, but listens anyway. Nyx was never a household name in the way Athena or Apollo were. There are no sprawling temples in her honor, no gleaming statues carved by sycophantic sculptors hoping for immortal fame. But that doesn't mean she was forgotten. Quite the opposite. You reach a clearing now, scattered with crude altars made of black stone. No crowds gather here, just one woman, seated quietly, pouring a libation into the soil. The wine soaks in quickly. She says nothing, but her eyes are wet. Historians still argue whether Nyx was ever formally worshipped. There's little archaeological evidence, no dedicated temple ruins with plaques bearing her name. But there are signs, faint and flickering, like torchlight caught in fog. In Orphic hymns, those deeply mystical, often cryptic Greek texts, Nyx appears frequently, invoked not as a deity of spectacle, but of understanding. They called her Mother of the Gods, Night of the Broad Wings, Source of all. The tone was always the same, reverent, cautious, grateful, afraid. You continue past the woman and into a small cave, barely large enough to stand in. On the back wall is a symbol drawn in ash and ochre, a figure cloaked in night, holding a star. No label, no inscription. But you know who it is. Some fringe cults, especially in the more remote parts of ancient Greece places, where the boundary between wild and civilized Blurred may have revered Nyx as the original oracle. Before Apollo claimed Delphi, before the sun spoke through young priestesses, some whispered that the Pythia's voice had once belonged to her. You press your hand against the cave wall, and for a second, the stone feels warm. You're not alone. One scroll fragment, found buried beneath layers of soot and salt in a coastal ruin, references a now lost site, the Oracle of the Hollow Night. According to its text, supplicants didn't see visions. They slept. That was the ritual. They lay down in the dark and waited for dreams, for voices. For her Nyx doesn't answer questions the way other gods do. You don't get clear prophecies or convenient rhyming riddles. You get a sensation, a symbol, a choice. And sometimes, if she's feeling generous, a little fear. You pass now through a circle of stones. No guards, no golden offerings. Just bones, small ones, carefully arranged in spirals. Animal bones, you hope. Above the stones, small figures dangle from string made of straw, thread, and nightshade berries. They turn gently in the air. Someone once called this folk worship. You call it surviving the darkness. These were the kinds of rituals people didn't talk about. Not because they were shameful, but because they were personal. You didn't go to Nyx to brag about harvests or victories. You went to her when your child wouldn't wake, when your dreams turned against you, when the moon vanished and you couldn't find your way home. And unlike the Olympians, Nyx didn't need flattery. You kneel beside one such string doll, and you hear it, a quiet hum. Not from your ears, but from beneath them. It vibrates in your bones. It says nothing specific, just, I'm here. In Athens, amid the marble columns and clinking amphorae, Nyx was rarely spoken of in public. But in the countryside, far from the center, her name was known. Mothers taught their children to whisper it when they had bad dreams. Fishermen muttered it under their breath when venturing out before dawn. Midwives kept poppy seeds and jet beads by the bedside. One odd detail scholars still debate: the number of oil lamps found in rural graves, shaped like eyes or stars or both. They weren't always lit, but they were always present, watching, remembering, perhaps a quiet tribute to the one who sees without sight, who dreams without sleeping. You make your way out of the cave now, and the woman from before is gone. But the air feels full, like she left something behind. Or maybe Nyx never needed a physical form to begin with. Maybe she was the woman. Maybe she was the moment. As you walk, you catch whispers in the trees, not voices, but memories of voices. Someone saying a name in fear. Someone else saying it in thanks. Nyx, not shouted, not sung, just said. With weight. And maybe that's the heart of her cult. Not a building, but a behavior. A way of treating darkness, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. A companion. A mother who doesn't coddle, but never abandons. You pass a final altar, this one old, cracked, mossy. No one's tended it in centuries. But in the center rests a bowl, full of fresh poppy petals. No one's here, but someone was. Maybe last night. Maybe every night. Nyx doesn't require attendance. She just shows up, and those who remember, those who feel her, return the favor. Not with spectacle, but with silence. You walk now through a field that shouldn't exist. It lies between stories, between myths, an expanse of unrecorded time, half memory, half shadow. The grass here is colorless, but soft, like walking through someone else's forgotten dream. In the center stands a statue, or rather, what used to be a statue. Only the base remains, dark and chipped, with a single word barely legible in worn Greek script. Nu Isai. Nyx. And yet, no one can agree what the statue looked like. Ancient descriptions vary wildly. Some say she had great black wings, like a storm unfolding. Others claim she was featureless, just a hooded shape cut from void, a human silhouette filled with stars. And then there were the artists who refused to render her at all. Too sacred, too strange, or maybe too powerful to capture in marble and pigment. You circle the base, imagining what once stood here. A form too real for form, a face too familiar to reproduce. She was never meant to be seen. That's part of the deal. Nyx doesn't perform. She doesn't pose. Historians still debate whether this lack of surviving imagery is an accident or an act of reverence. Or perhaps fear. The Greeks immortalized everything, even the gods they hated, but not her. She lingers only in poetry, fragments, and dreams. A whisper without a portrait. Even Homer, who named nearly every god and goddess in his Iliad and Odyssey with enough flair to make a casting agent swoon, barely describes her. When he does mention her, it's with quiet urgency, as if just invoking her name is enough to change the tone of the story. But art tried here and there. There's one vase now tucked in a dusty Italian museum that possibly shows her in profile. She's not labeled, of course. No goddess of shadow ever is. But the figure hovers at the edge of the scene, wreathed in flowing black, touching the forehead of a sleeping man with 2 fingers. He dreams in the next frame. She is gone. Another artifact, a fragment of a silver mirror from Thessaly, shows the Oneroid dreamed spirit spiraling from a central cloaked form. Scholars guess it's Nyx, but the shape is barely visible, deliberately smudged, as if the artist wanted you to sense her without seeing her. You pause beneath the statue base and close your eyes. Something stirs behind your eyelids. Not a vision. Not quite. Just an impression. Black feathers brushing your cheek. A sigh without lungs. Stars blinking once, then vanishing. You're starting to understand. Nyx's power was never about spectacle. It was withdrawal. Everyone else wants her attention. Dionysus with his wine, Aphrodite with her shimmer, Ares with his manly tantrums. Nyx, she pulls away. And in that absence, you lean forward. You want more. You look for her. And maybe that's why her image doesn't last. Not because no one could depict her, but because no one should. You find yourself now inside a small, ruined amphitheater. Once, this was a place for poetry. The kind of soft, melancholy hymns sung at dusk, where no torches burned too brightly, and the audience barely whispered. A place where stories of Nyx were spoken under breath, not shouted to the crowd. One preserved verse remains, scratched into a stone seat near the front. In shadow she dances, barefoot across our fears, leaving no mark, but making all paths darker. It doesn't even rhyme in Greek, but it hits hard. You sit, letting the silence press in around you. The wind shifts. You hear fragments of other poems about her, fragments that never made it into school books. The ones about her role in fate, her breath on the neck of seers, her name whispered by those about to sleep beside swords and secrets. It's almost comedic, really. Zeus gets temples the size of stadiums. Apollo gets art galleries. Artemis gets fan fiction. And Nyx? She gets erased, deliberately, softly, like a chalk drawing before the rain. And yet here she is. Still feared, still powerful, still present. One fringe theory, more modern than ancient, and definitely the product of a few too many sleepless nights, suggests that Nyx chose to vanish from art and memory, that her influence remains strongest when she's unseen, that she evolved from goddess to presence, from myth to mechanic, the rule behind the rule, the force behind forgetting. You step out of the theater and look up. It's evening again. You don't know how or when, but the sky is growing soft. washed with that deep blue that means night is just over the ridge. You feel her there, not descending, not arriving, just resuming, like she was always there, waiting for you to notice. And as you turn to walk, the shadows stretch in front of you, not behind. She's not in the past. She's in everything that comes next. You're walking uphill now, though in this place, direction is more metaphor than geography. The world around you feels quieter than before, like it's holding its breath. The air is heavy with tension, as if the myths themselves are watching to see what happens next. You're approaching a high point in the story, not a climax, exactly, but a confrontation. A cosmic standoff that never quite broke into battle, and yet defined the boundaries of divine power for eternity. Nyx never raised an army. She never challenged Olympus with spears or storms. She didn't need to. All she had to do was exist. You crest the hill and find yourself on a field of pale dust and starlight, suspended above time. In the distance, the marble spires of Mount Olympus gleam like overly enthusiastic frosting. You could almost hear the bickering. Zeus tossing bolts, Hera throwing shade, Hermes making a sarcastic snack run. But out here, in this in-between place, the volume is muted. The light doesn't reach, and they don't look in this direction, because this is the edge of their world. Nyx stands just beyond it. You see her now not as a form, but as a shape in the absence. Like someone cut her silhouette out of the stars. You don't get a face. You don't get eyes. But you feel her gaze all the same. Not judging. Not welcoming. Just ... aware. Back in the golden days of myth. Before monotheism tidied things up, Greek religion was one big power contest. The Olympians weren't the first, and they definitely weren't the only. Titans, primordial deities, abstract forces with names like destruction and desire, roamed the lore like cosmic interns gone rogue. And somewhere in all of that, Nyx remained above it. Or maybe beneath it. Lateral to it. When the Titans were overthrown, when Kronos fell and the Olympians rose, gods took sides. Alliances were made. Lines were drawn. But Nyx, she didn't choose. She didn't have to. Historians still argue whether this neutrality was part of a wider cultural reverence for night and dreams, or if she was simply too early, too foundational to be dragged into anyone else's drama. Either way, she stayed untouched, and it made the Olympians nervous. Zeus, for all his swagger, had an ego made of eggshells. He could handle rivals so long as they were visible, nameable, beatable. But Nyx, she couldn't be grasped, couldn't be bribed or threatened. And that, more than any army or prophecy, made her dangerous. There are whispers of moments, never fully written down, when Olympians tried to exert power in her direction. Hades once, seeking influence over dreams. Apollo, perhaps, attempting to absorb oracles long held in the night's favor. Even Artemis, goddess of the moon and hunt, brushing against Nyx's territory in her quiet worshippers' hearts. None of them succeeded, not because Nyx pushed back, but because their power simply didn't land. Like trying to punch fog, like shouting into sleep. She wasn't resistant. She was untouchable. You walk further into the void-lit plain, and statues begin to appear around you, not of Nyx, but of those who try to challenge the edges of her domain. Faded outlines of power stretching toward a boundary they couldn't cross. You recognize a few. The faint glow of Hermes' winged sandals. The trailing edge of Apollo's laurel. Even Athena's helm, tilted ever so slightly forward. Each one stopped short, because Nyx wasn't a battlefield. She was a boundary, and you don't fight the boundary. You obey it. A fringe theory in ancient cosmology suggests that Nyx operated not within mythical space, but metaphysical space. That she was not a character, but a concept one which gods, mortals, and even time itself had to work around. Not a goddess of the night, but the personification of the limit of divinity. You step among the statues and notice how none are complete. Every figure is missing its hands or eyes or feet, as if something in the night refused to let them finish. They reached too far and were gently unmade. It's telling, isn't it? How many gods were born in brightness, surrounded by praise, gilded in the light of Olympus. And yet none frightened their peers as much as the one born in silence. Alone, in the dark, you look back over the field now and feel the truth settle in your bones. Nyx didn't need allies. She didn't need worship. She didn't even need to be remembered, because all things eventually return to her, not in punishment, but in rhythm. You think again of that infamous Hypnos incident, how Zeus backed off with uncharacteristic humility, and you start to wonder how often that's happened off-record, off-stage. How many times did gods blink and walk away when a shadow thickened? How many stories never made it to marble or myth because no one wanted to admit they'd been stopped by nothing at all? That's her final weapon. Really. Silence. You reach the edge of the plain now, where the stars begin again, cold and soft as feathers. Behind you, the statues remain ghosts of ambition. Ahead, only night. And somewhere, without moving, Nyx is watching, not judging. Just waiting. Because no matter how high Olympus rises, no matter how many myths are shouted from scrolls and stages, all light dims, all noise quiets, all gods sleep, and she'll be there when they do. You step off the edge of the star-flecked plain and feel your body lighten, not in the way feathers float, but the way memories fade, the way old names dissolve when no one speaks them anymore. And yet Nyx remains. You sense her not behind you or ahead of you, but everywhere, like the pause between words, the dark between stars. You're not afraid. Not anymore. You move slowly now, surrounded by the hum of everything she's touched, which, you're starting to realize, is everything. Night has always been here. Before Olympus. Before Titans. Before time even had a wrist to wear a watch on. Nyx didn't just enter the world. She framed it, wrote the borders, drew the edges, and those edges, they're still here. You stroll past the soft outlines of thoughts you've never fully formed, glimpses of fears you once had, little dreams that wandered off in the middle of the night and never came back. They gather here, not trapped, not punished, just preserve. Nyx doesn't destroy. She holds. And that, weirdly, might be the scariest part, because you begin to understand now why even the gods tread lightly around her. She doesn't fight you. She doesn't test you. She knows you. All of you. Every version. Every what if. Every version of you that didn't happen. You move through a place where reflections hang in midair like lanterns' faces that look like yours, but aren't. The version of you that said yes instead of no. The one that never left. The one that tried. The one that gave up. Nyx sees them all. Cradles them. Not with judgment, but with presence. Because she doesn't need to punish you. She just shows you what's already inside. You think back to all the other gods, how they love being known. They carve themselves into marble, stamp their stories onto temples. They want to be seen, worshipped, immortalized. Nyx? She never needed that. She exists beyond reputation, beyond religion. She doesn't need your offerings, just your attention. And even then, not all of it. You step through a veil now, lighter than mist, and feel yourself descending not downward, but inward. You are returning to yourself. But with her in the folds. It hits you, and why she's the most feared primordial. It's not the night. It's not her children. It's not even the idea of death or doom or dream. It's because she makes you still. And in that stillness, you meet yourself. No filters. No distractions. No divine spectacle. Just you, small, soft, mortal, and seen. That's the part the gods can't stand. Being seen without their armor. Their roles. Their followers. Their stories. You remember now how people once whispered her name before bed. Not in devotion, but in hope. Hope that sleep would come. That the dreams would be kind. That the night would pass quietly. And when it didn't, when the dreams turned heavy or strange, they still whispered. Because Nyx wasn't the cause. She was the companion. You pass through the final chamber now, and it's empty. Not barren. Just waiting. In the middle sits a single object. A stone. Smooth. Cold. Familiar. You touch it and feel nothing. Which is exactly the point. She was never about sensation. She was about pause. About the breath between dreams. About what lies underneath all the stories, all the gods, all the noise. She's still here, you know. In every shadow you pass on the sidewalk. In every flicker behind your eyelids as you fall asleep. In the split second of silence before the song starts. In the reason you sometimes wake up at 3 a.m. and just know. You're not alone. Nyx never left. She never had to. She doesn't walk among us. She rests within. U.S. And maybe that's why we're always tired. Because deep down, we know night isn't just a time. It's a presence, a mother, a mirror, a mystery. And she is always watching. And now, we slow everything down. You're still here. Safe within the quiet folds of story and myth, where Nyx doesn't chase or shout, she simply waits. And watching her has a way of softening even the hardest thoughts, like moonlight spilling across the floor of your mind. Let yourself feel the quiet. No need to hold on to names or theories, or the tangled family tree of primordial forces. They'll still be there in the morning. Right now, it's okay to let them drift. Feel the weight of your body where you lie. That slow gravity pulling you toward stillness. A kind of sleep that isn't just about rest, but return. To the dark. To yourself. To something bigger than time. Imagine Nyx now not as a goddess. Not as a myth, but as the hush in your chest when you stop thinking. The exhale after a long day. The dream that carries you without asking where you want to go. Let the silence rise like a tide. Let the shadows grow soft. Like velvet over your thoughts. There is no rush. No fear. Just that gentle, endless night. And the presence in it who knows you. You are safe. You are still. You are seen. Sleep now, soft and slow, beneath the wings of the one who has always been here. Nyx is watching. And in her gaze, even the stars know when to rest. End of script. Sweet dreams.